vehicle is not a house. Like you can put house things in it that look more like a house, but it's not a house. I think like one of the biggest things is like you do need to think about your bathroom options because you do to an extent. People don't want to hear this. You have to deal with your own waste to an extent, and you have to make sure you're doing it in a way that's respectful.
Don, we have been talking over the internet. We have exchanged a few emails. We have been in touch with you over YouTube, Instagram, your social media handles, etc. as well. And finally, you are here on the big day. We want to talk to you about your channel, The Dawn of Vanlife. A lot of our followers have been recommending it to us to talk to you about this unique lifestyle that you follow. So, Dawn, welcome to Yodoozy. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good.
Great, great. The Dawn of Van Life, your YouTube channel, it focuses on your life experiences living in a van. What is the purpose behind starting this channel? How did it all happen?
Well, when it first started, I had lost my housing, but I hadn't lost my job. And a lot of what you saw on YouTube was sort of these two extremes. It was like the homeless person who was like down and out and like had nothing, or like these extremely over glamorized lifestyles that it's hard for most people to really like even get into. And I was somewhere in the middle. It's like I had resources. I didn't have all the resources. I certainly couldn't go skating across the country as freely as I wanted to. But I started living out of my car. And I enjoyed some of the flexibility of the lifestyle as I started to get into it. And so that's when I decided to get my minivan. And after that, I had the conversion van. And now I have a box van. So yeah, it basically started. Actually, my original title for the channel was Working Homeless, but as it became more of a choice and less of this forced situation, I actually changed it to the Dawn of Van Life, which has been for like most of the time. And it's just been great. Like that's how it started, and it's just been great ever since.
Amazing. As you mentioned, like this is a lifestyle that you have chosen now to live outside of a van. Sorry, to live out of a van. How's it turning out now that you've been living out of a van for 2 years? I think 2 to 3 years.
It's been almost 3 years. It's definitely been
Three
over
years.
2.5, not quite 3 years yet, but inching toward that 3 year mark. For me personally, it's been good. Like the first 37 years of my life, I was just living in Maryland. I hadn't seen anything. And then I flew across the country for a job opportunity in California. And then I was just living in California. So I missed the whole middle of the country. I hadn't seen it. I hadn't seen much. And what I loved about living this lifestyle is as long as I could put gas in the tank, I could go places and see things. Even when I was working, it's like I don't have to spend the weekend at home because I can take my home with me and go somewhere. So I'm still at home if I need to do stuff at home, but I can take my, home somewhere else and just like enjoy the environment and new sights and all those things.
And without the bills.
And without without the household type bills, there's
Yes.
still
Or
uh
travel bills as
cost.
such as well, the flight expenses, the stay expenses, and all those things.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it takes away those
Pretty amazing.
expenses. Like it's going to cost me the same, except for actually getting there. Like it's going to cost me the same to have my house parked, in a bordering state as it is in. Well, that's not true because gas prices, but you get what I'm saying. like the cost is always just the vehicle. If the vehicle can get there, that's your only cost. No hotels, no planes, no buses, no rentals, none of that stuff.
Isn't that the dream? Like we all want to live that sort of a lifestyle where we don't have to pay for our hotel stays or like costly bills for airline, etc. I understand that you have been a production or a stage manager before as well for theater,
Yeah,
right?
that's actually still something I take up as freelance jobs become available. I've worked a lot of odd jobs, but my primary career and actually what I went to school for is to be a stage manager. So like I work backstage in theater. I basically consider it like herding cats. I mean, I don't know how else to describe the job. I say like I work for everybody and everybody works for me at the same time.
That's true. So, how much of an influence was this decision basis the creative field that you were in? You know, like because you were so used to solving problems, thinking creatively. You saw a problem here and you wanted to solve it in your own unique way, I would say. How much of your job or your past or your experiences in life had that influence on you?
Well, the good thing about living in a vehicle, even with my job, was it actually opened up the door for me to say yes to more things. Because the thing is, like, if you live a certain place, there's only so far you can go for a job to be able to do it comfortably. And while I had this fantasy that I was going to be hopping states doing stage management job, that didn't work. But for example, a lot of my contacts are in Oakland, but I got the opportunity to do a show down in San Jose, which isn't crazy far, but it's far enough that everybody from like closer to like San Francisco and Oakland, that was a huge commute for them. I just took my van down there and I just lived down there for the run of the show, finding places to park. And it was great. Like everybody at the end of the night is like, oh, we got to drive all the way back and da 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 da. And I'm like, I'm just going to bed because I'm tired. No commute for me. So in a way, it was like, this is actually serving my job um, in a lot of ways. So that's sort of like how I think like it really complemented sort of what I was already doing as a job.
Amazing. And something, like you'll see a lot of older people, like once they retire, they end up selling off their fortunes, buy an RV and travel around the world, and you're able to do that while you're still working, while you are still in the heyday of your life, as some would say.
Yeah.
So, and also, Don, like lately we have been seeing a lot of people, who have been looking to live their lives out of vehicles, be it a van, be it a car or something. What do you think is the reason behind it? Is it the money? Is it the pressure of commuting or whatever it may be? What do you think is the reason?
I mean, I think especially in more expensive areas, it's just the cost of rent. And even if you buy a house, sometimes there's property tax. And I think especially if you don't have like a big family or like, kids in school, even though people do this lifestyle with kids, um, it starts to weigh on you of like, why am I paying all these bills and I'm working crazy hours? So it's like I'm spending most of my time in an office and this amount of time in the house or whatever that I'm trying to maintain. And people are starting to see sort of that as not the ideal life. I mean, that used to be the thing, like you get a house, you settle down, you have the car, you have all these things. And now with the cost of those things weighed against lost time to maintain those things, I think more people are seeing value in a lifestyle that gives them that money back so that they could do things they couldn't do otherwise. And like there's a money saving aspect to being in van a lot of people enjoy, but also there's something a lot of people don't talk about, which I consider to be money redirection, which is like the money that I'm using to like maintain having a static house. If I have a non-static house and I can make that work, I can use that money to actually do the things I want to do as opposed to the things that are keeping me tied and not allowing me to travel. Like going back, to the comparison, if you have to go to a hotel and you own a house, it's not even just going to the hotel. It's like, is my house protected while I'm not there? And all these other questions that come with having the static house. And some people see value in just eliminating that. It's not for everybody, but there's a lot of people who are like, if I have a choice, I'd rather redirect that money. It's not even so much about money savings. And for some people, it is money savings. Or like for me at the beginning, it was a lack of affordability. And the having a vehicle allowed me to work and earn more money. Having a vehicle without a house, as crazy as that sounds, actually helped my income more than having a house without a vehicle. So just combining those two things in some way actually led to a better growth. Um, than the opposite. As weird as that sounds, because that doesn't fall into what we consider normal.
No, definitely, it makes sense. And, like I've been living in Europe as well for some time. And I figured out something there that a lot of these students who were going to university, instead of renting their accommodation, they'll borrow money, they'll buy out a flat or, a house or a small one bedroom apartment or something like that. And they'll sell it off once they move out of university to save on rent costs there. So this is just an alternate way of saving money while you are working. That is the way
Yeah.
that I see it.
Yeah.
Right, it's a smart choice at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So, you have been living out of a van for nearly 3 years now. What has been your best and worst experience?
I mean, the best experience has been driving across the country. Because, like I said, when I came from the East Coast to the West Coast, I just flew straight across. I think I was in a Texas airport for like 5 minutes. So, like, besides that, I hadn't seen anything in the middle. It was just like straight across. So recently, I drove back to Maryland to see people I hadn't seen in like almost 2.5 years at that point, but also just to go back and close out some business I still had there. But just being able to like drive across the country and take it in, and sometimes like it's just boring, 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 and then you turn this corner and it's just gorgeous and your mind is blown and it wasn't even something you were looking for. So I have to say, I don't have a particular event so much as those moments. I'd have to say the worst is a breakdown. To me, there's nothing worse than the moment your vehicle won't go. Like, that's the main thing it needs to do, is go. And I value that more than anything else in like anything you're taking on the road. And when your money is tight and you have like a major thing go wrong, that can be really hard. Like when I drove to Utah, not Utah, Oregon. I don't know why I said Utah, because I really liked Utah. So the memories are like, Utah was beautiful. When I drove to Oregon for a job, I actually had my radiator blow out. Luckily, it blew out once I was kind of there, and so I had some support, but like I didn't have the money right away. Again, luckily, I was going there for a job, so I was able to just get the vehicle parked, wait for that first paycheck to come in, and then pay to have the radiator repaired. But those are the scariest moments, when the vehicle won't work and you're trying to troubleshoot what resources you have and you're already operating on limited resources. So I think, like, for me, the most security is in an emergency fund. And that would be the biggest advice I gave to anybody going into this lifestyle. Like, put aside something for an emergency fund. Um, yeah.
That must be pretty scary, like getting your a vehicle as well as a home, like breaking down in the middle of a road, like while you're on a way, either commuting to job or, like it's not something where you can just leave it for the company to come in and take care of the vehicle while you go back to your house, sleep in your bed, because
Yeah,
you have to stay with the
exactly.
vehicle. Yeah.
And even when you have the money, if you're going to like lose your home for several days, and if you're in your like a place where you know people, that's great. But if you don't, then what do you do? Do you, in addition, so that emergency fund isn't just covering the vehicle repair. You need somewhere to stay, be that like a hotel or like, you know, some other situation you could
Yes.
find. Sometimes, honestly, you just got to be honest with the mechanic shop and be like, I'm living in this. I know it's going to take some time, but can I just stay in my house
Hmm.
um, while it's being repaired? And some shops are going to be okay with that, especially like some shop out in the middle of nowhere where it's like this, it's an owner operator type thing.
Yeah.
But like a lot of the bigger businesses, especially the ones under like Walmart's going to be like, not going to be like, yeah, you can stay in the shop if you have to go to like a Walmart shop. So those things are shot in the dark and they're just scary, trying to troubleshoot and figure out what are your resources and what can you do.
That's true. That's true. Um, Also, like like I have a couple of friends like who have been to US, who have been traveling in US as well, and a couple of them have even tried backpacking in US, and they find that like trying to find a lift or just hitchhiking in trucks, etc., is very difficult in US.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these trucks, etc., are operated by companies there, so they cannot have two people coming inside the truck or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, the
So,
fantasy of the hitchhike is more fantasy than reality.
absolutely. So how do you deal with that situation? Like when your van breaks down in the middle of nowhere and you just have to go somewhere. How do you deal with the entire situation? You call up the company for repairs, etc. But how do you find your way out of that?
I mean, like, you have to troubleshoot the situation. Like, sometimes the vehicle won't start and it's something dumb you did. Like, I left the lights on one time, and so the battery was dead, and I had a personal jump starter. So, one, you want to have as many, like, emergency recovery items for yourself as possible. Like, I have a personal jump starter, I have a tire inflator. I carry around a couple, even though people say don't use them, they can get, it got me to a tire repair shop one time, those spray cans that you can just spray, hook it up to the thing, spray it into the tire, and it'll inflate it. And that goo is in there. No, you're not supposed to leave it. I went to a tire repair shop right away, and he was able to repair it. He just cleaned it out. He didn't even need a new tire. So having as many self repair things for yourself and educating yourself on that as much as humanly possible and as much as you feel comfortable, because there's things about the car I need a mechanic. I'm not going to get into that stuff. As much as you personally can to your ability. Second, having roadside assistance either through your insurance or through AAA, making sure it's the right insurance for your vehicle. Because if you have insurance on like when I had a minivan, I just had everything under like normal personal insurance. But as I got into larger vehicles, sometimes you need to make sure you have AAA plus RV or you won't get towed. So making sure you have the right sort of roadside coverage for your situation. Always letting somebody, like, I travel a lot alone. I like to let friends know, number one, I'll be like, hey, I'm about to take this road. It seems a little abandoned. Like, if you don't hear from me in 2 days, at least just check in on me or get concerned. So I'll do that a lot so that even if it's not people who are local to you, there are people who are looking for you to show up somewhere and check in again. So having that check-in system, and sometimes honestly, you even though they may not stop, take a chance on a stranger. Like, I have stopped for people. There was a guy whose car was dead, and I drove him. And I was a little wary. Here I am, this like solo black woman, and here's this white guy on the side of a road with a gas can. I mean, but I took a chance. He seemed all right. I got him to a gas station, and we took him back to his car, and he was able to get on the road. Um, and sometimes people, strangers are kind, even when they shouldn't be. Like, there's the guy who with the tow truck. He's like, technically, I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm gonna help you out real quick and try to get you back on the road. So yeah, I mean, you just have to have a level of action plans. Being able to self help as much as possible, having that roadside assistance, and even if you're traveling solo, trying to have like some sort of check-in system with someone, so at least somebody's thinking about you if they haven't heard from you in a while. And doing research if you're in a town and try to find, like, a mechanic, being open to asking local people for help. Like, if you're near a gas station, just going in and being like, you know what, I don't know what's wrong with my vehicle, it won't move, do you know somebody who could come look at it? So all those things, there's no one thing. It's just having a bunch of action plans.
Amazing. And I must say that, like it must be some lifestyle that you're living because at the end of the day, you get a lot of new experiences out of, living out of a van, as you'd say. On that note, there's something different that I wanted to ask you. We understand that you have been living that life, etc. But say, for example, if you were the ambassador for van life, like telling people, hey, stop living in houses, come here, live in a van. How would you sell it as an option to people who can't afford those costly rentals in urban areas?
This may sound weird, but I do not like the idea of selling van life so much as being a resource for people who are coming into it on its own. Because there are some really difficult and different things about living in a vehicle. It is not a house. I don't care if you put a shower in it. It's not the same as a shower in a house. You have to source your home water. There's a whole bunch of things involved. And so, like, there's all this theory, like, yes, it would have been super cheaper for me to have stuck with living in a car, but there's a lot of reasons I wanted a larger vehicle. And so in some ways it can't just come down to money. Money is an important factor, and if you see that as a bonus, and you're looking for information so you can see if it's for you, I would rather be a resource than a salesman, if that makes any sense.
It
Um,
does. It does to a great extent, Don. And another thing, that you might say is that there are a certain type of people, like who want to experience it just for the sake of it. While there may be some people who are just totally in the need of, adopting to such a lifestyle. So possibly it's best that you are advising them in how to deal with the situations, because then they would not end up comparing their current lifestyle or the previous lifestyle with the kind of life that they're choosing to live. And
yeah,
it would be much more of a situation where they are possibly this is the only way out for them.
yeah,
So
and
when you are in
I
that situation, the kind of thoughts that come in your head, they are completely different.
and I also think like the way I would talk about van life to somebody who is sort of on their last leg and sort of like I don't know what else to do to live out of my van, and especially if you're prepared, if you're going to say I'm going to live out my vehicle in transition to getting back to normal housing, that's a different mindset you have to go into it with than I'm interested in travel, I'm interested in, you know,
The
seeing
freedom.
things outside. Yeah, I'm interested in that part of the freedom. Like the way I would approach a conversation with that person is completely different because I think it's completely doable to do. I became homeless when I lived in DC and I transitioned back into normal housing. How I handled that situation in some ways is different than how I handled the situation when I was like, all right, I'm committed to this. I'm doing this by choice now. And so I think those two mindsets are different. And so I think those are two different conversations. There's some commonalities, like the grand question of how you go to the bathroom. If you no longer have access to standard plumbing, that answer is the
True.
same. But as far as like what your action plan should be, like how you would direct money, how you would value getting into a very expensive vehicle when you're at least intending to do it longer term or for travel might be different than I'm just getting by in the city and keeping my city job and mostly going to be doing the urban thing. So yeah, approaching those two conversations are very different conversations with some overlapping subjects, basically.
Amazing. I think that explanation should answer all the questions now. Don, you have been doing this for a long time now. You also run the YouTube channel where you share tips, tricks, hacks of living out of a van, as well as your own personal vlogs, etc. So, what are the essential things that you believe that somebody should know before they plan to live out of a vehicle as such?
I mean, it goes back to a vehicle is not a house. Like you can put house things in it that look more like a house, but it's not a house. I think like one of the biggest things is like you do need to think about your bathroom options because you do to an extent. People don't want to hear this. You have to deal with your own waste to an extent, and you have to make sure you're doing it in a way that's respectful to whatever environment you're in. So even if you get a flushable toilet, it's going into a tank. It's not like when you flush it in a house and it, goes out to the sanitation center and they're going to take care of it. Like you have to have an action plan for like what it means to have that tank. And if you decide to do a dry toilet, what it means to have that dry toilet, you're going to have to source your water. Like you can put all the sinks and showers you want. You don't have unlimited water. You have the size of a tank you installed. Water is heavy. That's going to affect the like weight of your vehicle. If you're doing hand carry tanks, they're going to be heavy. Like you're going to take this empty thing and then suddenly it's going to be like I have a 7-gallon jug. That thing is like lifting weights. That's my exercise. It's like a 7-gallon jug. So like all those little considerations are just going to be different. And yeah. I think I lost the question, but
So, water, sewage, anything else that they should be worried about before
electricity,
electricity?
electricity. Like people think solar is like this magic thing. Like you're going to put a solar panel on your roof and buy one little battery and have like power forever. And you could be in an overcast place. If you want to go out to like the national forest, guess what forests have? Trees. Guess what shade does? Watch your solar panels. And so you will very quickly learn that you have to regulate your electricity. A friend of mine said it's like using technology to go back to the pioneer days. And I was like, this is the most apt description of sort of what van life is, because you're sourcing water, you have to regulate your electricity, you have to be aware of your resources, like you're in the pioneer days, but you're doing it with all this technology. So you have modern things in this limited sense. And like me, I try not to charge things overnight. When I was in a house, when I went to bed, I'd have everything on charge. Or when I've stayed in places that had like, on grid electricity, even with solar, I don't do that. Like, I try to use my laptop during the middle of the day because that's when the sun is out. So I'm getting a lot of regurgitation of electricity. Whereas once it's nighttime, there's no sun. um, so the thinking and planning that has to go into that, I think, is a huge adjustment for people who are used to like just turning on the water and not thinking about it, plugging things in, not thinking about it, using the bathroom and not thinking about it. So yeah.
So in actuality, like when you're talking about a different lifestyle that you're living, it's actually a complete lifestyle change. It's not the same behavior, not the same patterns that you follow when you're living inside a house.
Yeah. And that's why, like, it sounds nice and it is nice to say, oh, I'm getting rid of rent, I'm getting rid of this, I don't have to pay the water bill. Well, that means now you have to source water, and what does that mean, and are you willing to, you know understand how that's different and embrace it, or is it going to frustrate you, to the point where you'd rather be paying the water bill and just be able to turn on your sink and not have to
Right.
worry about it?
So one question that everyone normally has on their mind when they are considering living out of a vehicle is the safety, and especially for a woman or a girl like yourself, like who's living just by herself. How safe is it for you to live out of a vehicle or for anyone else?
I have a weird perspective on this. I'm like, my house has wheels. If I feel unsafe, that's why that working engine is the number one priority. I only sleep where I feel safe, and if I feel unsafe, vroom, leave. I think a lot of the security measures that you would do for a house on wheels are the same as a regular house. I have cameras on my current box truck. I didn't have it on my previous vehicles, but like you can put camera protection systems, you can have alarms. I think where the feeling of insecurity comes from, and I completely understand this, is people who are used to living in a community with community support. Because the thing is, like, if you live in your house and you know your neighbors, they're also probably going to be looking out for your house when you're not there. Um, and if you've had that, unfortunately or fortunately, maybe it made it easier for me. I've never really had a strong community situation like that. Um, I never felt like I lost it, but I know when I hear from other people, there's a sense of security in that community that they know is there. And so that is something that you lose. But otherwise, I feel like, houses get broken into too. And people can watch houses because they're not going to move, and they can watch your patterns and things like that. So there's unsafeness in living around people, just like there's safety in living around people. I hate to say. So I've actually felt more safe being able to change to a location. I felt safer um, than I've felt in other situations where it's like, well, this is where I live, so this is where I have to come back to.
So
But
normally, on a daily basis, like whenever you're in a particular city, etc., where do you end up parking your van? And possibly, like when you go to sleep, you would look for a safe spot to park as well.
yeah, I mean, sometimes I use this app called iOverlander, and so a lot of times that'll just have information of experiences people that parked there before. But honestly, it's all observation, and feeling comfortable. I mean, like if you're neighborhood parking on a street, you can look up that neighborhood's crime, just like if you were shopping for a house. How you can go online and see like what the crime rates are and stuff like that. Like if you're really into that kind of stuff, you can check that. But a lot of times I just go on a feeling. I feel like I like to park on strip malls of businesses because I feel like there's usually cameras around, there's usually street lights, like if I'm in a city. If I'm out boondocking in the middle of nowhere, that's when really like motion lights and things like that come into handy, because if the light comes on, then you have a reason to pay attention. I do have a little what is it called? It's like a little bike alarm that reacts to vibration, like on the vehicle. And so having that has also made me feel safer, because that's because unfortunately my catalytic converter got stolen and I had to replace it. Um, but it'll react to like a vibration or motion too close to the vehicle in the cab area. So just having little alert systems that make you feel more comfortable. I don't like motion lights in the city because people are always going to walk by your vehicle in the city. So there's that. But places, I don't even know how to explain it. Like gyms, if you have a gym membership, which a lot of people do, for showers, then if it's allowed in a 24-hour parking lot, you can stay there. And again, there's probably going to be security lights, cameras for the business that also benefit you, because where you're going to get hit is the middle of some dark street where you're trying to hide in the shadows, and I consider that like the worst place to be.
That's true. Don, so just out of curiosity, in a month's time, like how often do you end up moving places where you park the vehicle? Or do you normally like circle around the city, go to job, come back and park in the same place?
When I'm working right now, I just had a show end. So right now I'm not working and I'm building out the box truck. So I basically float between my storage unit where my stuff is and then usually somewhere I'm going to park at night. Now, right now I'm in the Bay Area. And the good thing about being an urban van dweller who works in the area is you kind of already know the area. Like, I don't have to think too hard about it. There are streets I know where I can go. My day spot is not my night spot. Like, that's my biggest thing for me. If I'm somewhere during the day, that's not where I'm sleeping at night. Where I sleep at night is not where I'm going to be during the day. And those spaces rotate. And if somebody is doing specifically, I have a local job, I'm living out of my vehicle for my job or school, because I know a lot of people do this in college too, because they can't afford to live, either in an apartment or in the dorms. Then my advice is always to have at least 5 or 6 spots. And that's 5 night spots where you can just park at night and not be disturbed, and 5 or 6 day spots where you can hang out during the day if you don't need to be anywhere, such as work. Like, it's the weekend, so you're not going to classes, you're not going to work. We'll have like a local park that you can go to, like local parks, large shopping centers, like really large shopping centers. When I've had to edit all day, I'll go to a large shopping center. And guess what? You got everything. You got restrooms, you got food stores, you got clothing stores, you got places you can get supplies. And it needs to be large enough that if you're kind of hanging out in the back of it all day, like everybody's kind of involved in their own business, they're not really paying attention to you.
Don, are there any communities of vehicle dwellers, like people who are living out of van or vehicles, like the biker community that you have access to or that you subscribe to?
I mean, like, I try to participate in what's called RTR every year. We'll see what they do this year. Last year they were even online. Um, because of the situation. But there's RTR, which is just like a yearly event where a bunch of nomads come and gather and get together. There's events like Descend on Ben, where again, groups of nomads come together. You don't really want to clump up in urban environments because that would attract a lot of attention. Like, I think the worst thing you could do in an urban environment is like have all your van, and then everybody's paying attention. There's like, 5 vans with solar panels and obviously look kind of RV-ish. Whereas I think one of those vans, even if it's really obvious, is mostly going to be ignored. But once you get to 2, 3, 4, 5, and God forbid if you built out a school bus, you definitely don't want to line them up on a street together. But if you go out to BLM land, a lot of people will caravan together, especially when they meet at events like RTR and Descend on Ben and other events that are like van life related. And I'm like, hey, let's travel together for a little while. People reach out, especially in the digital age. So many people have connected on Instagram and like YouTube even, and I assume TikTok, but that's for the kids. I don't quite understand TikTok, but people connect on these social media platforms and then meet up, and then they might spend some time together and then diverge into their own thing and then connect back at a certain point. Um, so there's resources like that. Facebook also, Facebook, there's a lot of Facebook groups where people get to know each other on Facebook, and then when they're in the same area that they all connect. And I think that's how sort of van life community is built. Sometimes you randomly see a van and you start talking to somebody too, but uh,
Interesting. That's actually very interesting. Like, so did you at any point in time ended up taking a vacation together with a couple of different vans?
I went down to what is it called? It's in California. But I met up with some people once, and then I kind of went and did my own thing. I've never actively traveled with anybody else. I've met up with people and, gone to see them. There was another YouTuber who started watching my channel first, and then I started watching her channel, and we did end up meeting up because there was a meetup that was more about off grid than van life, while I was traveling across the country. And so we met up on my way back to California, and we hung out for a bit, and we stayed in contact. So things like that have happened, but I've never like actively traveled, like we're all going to Colorado or anything like that. Yeah.
All right. Don, I'll also want to ask you something a little bit more personal, and of course, you can choose to not answer the question. But with
Okay.
your experience of being a vehicle dweller, somebody who has been living in a van, etc., how much money would a person need on an average to survive this kind of lifestyle?
Uh, that's not even a personal question. It's a difficult question because it depends on your intent. If you want to travel, like your goal is big travel, like long-term travel, either going into other countries or traveling across the country a lot, you're going to need more money than the person who's kind of just puttering around town and working a day job, who may travel sometimes, but like that's not their goal. uh so it's going to vary. It's going to vary on how hardcore you're committed to having the fanciest vehicle you can get, or you know what, I'll be fine with a minivan and a mattress. um and so it's a very difficult question to answer, because those particular things are going to depend so much on the person going into it. But I would say take the biggest expense of whatever vehicle you're in, um, and try to save up that much money. Like, if you're in an older vehicle and there's a chance you could blow a transmission, you might want to have at least a decent amount in savings before you get out on the road. And if you blow something lighter than your whole transmission, then you'll be able to cover the repair, because that goes back onto the repair pile. So you need to price it based on your vehicle and your goals, if that makes any sense. It's less about, people always want an actual number, and I'm like, it's less about an actual number than your goals, um so much. Yeah, that's my answer.
Fair enough. Don, like, like there are a lot of students who might be trying to save money while they're at uni, or there could even be people who have just come into a job or are not making enough money and who cannot afford rent, especially in costly urban areas, etc. So, what sort of a situation would you say they can, or what sort of a van or a vehicle they can possibly rent out, or like purchase secondhand, or maybe even a new vehicle where they can live out a decent life at least for a couple of years?
Honestly, I was in my minivan, I think, for around like a year and a half of all of my time doing some sort of vehicle dwelling. And the minivan was freaking awesome. Like, you couldn't stand up in it. There's a lot of bad stuff about it. You can't stand up in it. Um, you only have a limited amount of space, but you're going into a situation where you're going to have a limited amount of space. And the good thing about the minivan is it fits in everywhere. Most people aren't going to blink at it in a neighborhood or wherever you park, unlike the white cargo van stereotype. And the creepy guy who always lives in the white van, wherever there's a creepy guy or not. Like, that holds a lot of stereotypes with it that the minivan doesn't. The minivan is seen at this as this sort of boring family vehicle. uh It can go into regular shops. It doesn't really have a lot of specialty, shop issues. It can park anywhere a normal car can park, and you can very easily put like a bed in it. Like the seats come out really easily, usually because they're made to come out, because it was designed for like families to be able to load it up with crap, take it home, and put all the seats back in. So I think it's like one of the most flexible vehicles for somebody on a budget who is doing it purely for monetary reasons, if you can deal with the not standing up part of it, and just spend time outside, actively take time to go on walks and stretch your legs. But it will give you the most convenience, like putting around the city and trying to maintain a job, rather you using it as a transitional vehicle back to standard housing, or a transitional vehicle until you can get something bigger, fancier, nicer. I'm just a big fan of the minivan.
Great to have your recommendation for the minivan. So people might also ask you a lot of questions in the comment section of your videos on YouTube. Any interesting ones that you would like to share with us?
One of my favorite comments to this day is like, I've usually had a twin bed or smaller than a twin bed in my vehicle. And this wasn't even really, it was a suggestion, sort of. The woman was like, well, if you meet a guy, women are usually bigger than men, and you're going to want to have enough room to accommodate him. And my answer was, well, I'm a lesbian, but I do like tall women. But still, if I
Interesting,
meet
and they can come with their own van.
yeah, exactly. That was pretty much it. I would assume their van is big enough for them. And I'm like, also, like, you can always rebuild the van. Like, if it really comes down to, oh, we're together now and we want to have a together van, like, you can always rebuild it. So even in the case of a guy, um, or girl or whatever, vans can always be rebuilt. I mean, that is such a part of the van life community, is that I get also to build my own thing that's custom to me and my current needs. And then if I have built it, I also know how to rebuild it. Now, mind you, people buy stuff already built all the time. But a lot of the community is that customization and building and rebuilding and changing and adjusting as you are on the road, because most people get it wrong the first time, no matter how much money they spend, because they've never lived in a van. And so when they really live in a van, they're like, oh, that thing wasn't important, and that thing was more important than I thought. And they don't know that until they actually get out on the road. And they can watch a billion van life videos and they still won't know what's important to them until they actually do it.
True. And again, it is a testament to your determination, like your passion as well, that you have chosen to live this kind of a life. Don, so we have seen so many videos on your YouTube channel, etc. We understand the tips, tricks, and the other stuff that you put out there. But what can we expect to see now in the future on the Dawn of Van Life?
I am trying to get out and travel in my new build. Like, so that is my big thing, is I want to get out and I want to go back to Utah, because Utah was freaking gorgeous, and see some of the places I didn't really get to say. I want to go back to Colorado. Colorado was gorgeous. I want to go, this sounds crazy at 41, I want to go to a Disney. I don't care if it's World or Land. I have never been to a Disney, and I'm 41 years old, and I want to go, even though it's going to cost the cost of a new house to go these days. I can buy a house with what it costs to go to Disney now, but I won't need a hotel because I'm bringing my own
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah. So possibly a trip to Disneyland is just going to come up this year.
I would hope so. Right now the big thing is just getting the box van build in a place where I can go. But I also try to keep my plans loose. Like, I don't try to be like, I'm going to spend September in blah blah blah. Um, it's more like I like to just keep my plans loose and say, like, I want to go check out states I haven't been in. I want to go back to states where I didn't get to stay long enough, more so than this is my travel plan. I try to keep it kind of loose unless I need to go somewhere for a job. And then it's like, okay, well, I guess I'm going in that direction, or I guess I'm going north. Oh, Canada. I have goals to go back to Canada. I was there less than a day, and I just want to go back, but not in winter.
Yes, I was going to ask you the same thing. Possibly not in winters.
Yeah, not in winter.
Amazing. So, Dawn, I think we'll be looking forward to a lot of new content on your channels. And it was really great to talk to you. Great having you here with us. And we look forward to seeing more interesting stuff on the van life.
Thank you so much. All
Thank you, Dawn.
right,
Have a
bye
good day
bye.
there.